everyone, I am Shreya Shane and welcome to Science Prodigy. So today I will be continuing language of chemistry. In the previous video we had done language of chemistry till the radicals part. We discussed a few important things. I hope you had even noted them down. So today I will be continuing from that part. So sit with a pen, pencil and a notebook as well, so that you can note down the important things. Not everything, but the things which you find important, which should be remembered. Okay, so I'll also keep on telling them, and most importantly, if I go for questions, that is in language chemistry, you have to practice them. And it's questions based, so I'll be doing them, you have to do it along with me so that you get more benefits. And if you have not yet subscribed, subscribe the channel for your benefit. So let's begin. Now for the radicals part, I ended up in the radicals part last day. You will find that in most of the books, the textbook which you are following, if you are following in a textbook, there is a basic chart of important radicals, or it has been mentioned from time to time. What are the radicals which you must know? For example, if I say NH4 plus, okay? If I say NH4 plus, you must know that this is the ammonium ion. So these certain basic things which you must know, these sort of radicals are given in your textbook. So make sure you know them. You don't overlook them. You have to know the name, because later on you will face a lot of problem. Get this. Later on you will face a lot of problem if you don't know this right now. Okay. So the basic radicals. Now what is a basic radical and what is an acid radical? That thing I did not say last day. It is very simple. When I say a basic radical, that means I am referring to the cations. Basic radicals are the cations. And when I am referring to acidic radicals or the acid radicals, that means they are the anions. Now in certain cases you must know what are having the monovalent cations, the monovalent anions, the divalent cations. In this way there may be certain things which are given in your textbook. I am again repeating, you must know them. That is zincate, plumbite, what is carbonate, what is bicarbonate, and all these things. Okay, so this is something which you have to remember. Now moving forward to the next important part. So now we will be beginning with the chemical formula, how we can write the chemical formula. Okay, so the basic important method for writing a chemical formula is the crisscross method. So how do we do that crisscross method? It is very simple. When I am talking about the crisscross method, that means we have to really go for a crisscross process. So what happens in a crisscross process? First of all, while naming a chemical formula, remember this exactly what I am saying. First, you have to write the name of the cation. That is the first you have to write the name of the basic radical, which is the cation. And then you have to write the name of the anion. So that's the first important rule. For any chemical formula, first you have to write the cation or the basic radical, and then you have to go for the anion or the acid radical. So that is very important. In any case, for naming any salt, any compound, cation first, always positive charge first. So now, as we see, we have written the cation. Let's take an example, KCl. You can start noting it down from here. KCl. Okay. How do we write it? First, K plus Cl minus. Plus 1. So we write the cation positive charge first, then comes the negative charge. Now we go for the crisscross of both the charges. We can just go for the absolute value without considering the charge. Just a crisscross of this. After the crisscross, we have to see that what is going here. We can see only 1 and 1 is going. So KCl becomes the formula. In the next example, it will be a bit more clearer to you how to apply the crisscross method. For example, if I take MgCl2, okay, magnesium chloride. First comes the cation Mg2 plus, then comes the anion Cl minus 1. Crisscross. This one is not a cross. Okay, crisscross. Now, what goes in here? 1. What goes in here? 2. So we have to write it in the form of a subscript. Mg, 1 has gone here, no issue. 2 has gone here, Cl2. So I hope you can understand what happens in the crisscross method. We write the cation, then the anion, then only the absolute value goes in there. So 2 has gone for this part, 1 has gone for this part, and we form MgCl2. So you have to ensure that you show these steps for the crisscross method. It carries marks. Okay. Then moving forward to one more example. For example, if we go for aluminium chloride, write the chemical formula of aluminium chloride. This is your question. How will you do it? You can pause the video, try it on your own, and then check it as well. Aluminium chloride. So first I have to write the cation, Al3 plus. Then I have to write the anion, Cl minus. In the next step, I will be going for crisscross. We see that 1 goes in here, 3 goes in here. So what can I write? It is nothing but AlCl3. Okay. Then moving forward to one more question. Write the chemical formula of aluminium sulfate. The question is chemical formula of aluminium sulfate. Pause the video, do it, and then check it out. The chemical formula for aluminium sulfate. Writing the cation first, then writing the anion, then going for crisscross. Crisscross. What do I find? Al. In the next product I am writing here directly. Aluminium has got the subscript 2 and sulfate ion gets the subscript 3. Aluminium gets the subscript 2. So what is our answer? Al2SO4 whole 3. So this is how it has been written. Taking one more example for writing the chemical formula. Taking the next example, iron sulfide. Write the chemical formula of iron. More specifically, it has to be mentioned in Roman numbers. Iron 3 sulfide. Iron 3 means we know its charge is plus 3. Iron Fe3 plus. Sulfide is S2 minus. Next step, we show the crisscross. So it becomes Fe2S3. So I hope it has been clear how we go for the naming of the chemical formula. We have done so many of them. If you are still having any problem, you can again go back and you can understand this, because I have done something around 5 to 6 examples, and crisscross method is very easy. Just go for crossing them out, it's done. So I hope it must be clear till now. Now we will be going for the naming of compounds. Now we will be doing how to name a compound. Okay, so we are given the chemical formula. How are we going to name the compound? This is also very easy. Just follow it step by step. First, the first important cases, let's look at the cases. The first important case is one metal and one non-metal is written in the chemical formula. So how do we do it? When I go for one metal and one non-metal, I can go for one particular thing, and that is ensure that it has been provided with a suffix "ite". Suffix is "ite", IDE. Example: write the name of the compound FeS. What will it be? Iron 2, because it is totally balanced. So 2 and 2 have totally cancelled each other. Iron 2 in Roman number, because iron shows variable valency of +2 and +3. So mentioning that the compounds which show, the elements which show variable valency, it is very essential to indicate which valency it is following in this particular chemical formula. So that should always, the variable valency, the valency which it contains, that valency should always be indicated in a bracket with a Roman number only. I repeat, it should be given in a bracket with Roman number only. So iron 2, then it should end with the suffix "ite" if it is a one metal and one non-metal. Iron is a transition metal, sulfur is a non-metal. So iron 2 sulfide. Okay. Then if we go for one more example, just a few minutes back we discussed, write the name of the compound MgCl2. Magnesium chloride, ending with an IDE. Okay. One more compound, Ki. What is it? Potassium iodide. Okay. Again an IDE. So I hope it is very much clear what happens when one metal and one non-metal is present. Now going forward to case 2. In case 2, you will see that two metals are present. So how do we name two metals? We have to ensure that we provide the necessary prefixes. That is, the next case is two non-metals. So how do we do it? When there are two non-metals, the case is very simple. We have to ensure that we provide the necessary prefixes, not always. Whenever the prefix is necessary, the prefixes like tri, tetra, penta, hexa, all these prefixes should be mentioned as and when necessary. Let's look at the examples. First example, PCl3. Both are non-metals. How do I name it? Phosphorus. 3 means tri. So the naming will be phosphorus trichloride. Okay. Let's see the next example. I am rubbing this area. Let's see the next example. PCl5. 5 means the prefix is penta. So the name is phosphorus pentachloride. Next example, Cl6. How do we name it? Sulfur. 6 means it is hexa. So sulfur hexachloride. Okay. So I hope it is clear how the prefixes need to be mentioned from and when necessary when we are going for the naming of a compound containing two nonmetals. Now case number 3. One metal, one nonmetal done, two nonmetals done. Case 3 is two such elements are present and with these two elements one oxygen is present. How do we name it? Let's see. So case number 3. Two elements are present and with these two elements, in addition to these two elements, we have an oxygen. So the most important criteria is how many number of oxygens are present with these two elements. So two element, okay, not one element, two element and an oxygen. Now the number of oxygen atom will make a difference. Let us see that through our examples. Suppose only one oxygen is present, NaClO. This is nothing but Na is sodium, this part having only a single oxygen. This is the hypochlorite. That is ITE and the hypo is a must, provided the initial part is nothing but the part of a next element. If I say NaBrO, how do I name it? Sodium hypobromite. Okay, hypo and ite with this in between is very essential for a single oxygen atom. So hypo and ite for a single oxygen atom. The more examples you practice, you write down on your own, the more better it becomes for you to remember it. Then the next one, two oxygen atoms. So it becomes hypo gets removed. Two oxygen atoms, we call it sodium chloride. If it is with NaBrO2, sodium chloride, ClO. Now, this one, 3. This is now sodium. For 3 oxygen atoms, it's a 8. ATE is the suffix. Sodium chlorate. If it was BrO3, sodium bromate. Okay. So in this way it is done. So you have to remember 3 is the suffix is 8. It has eaten it up. Then comes the final one. Total number of oxygen is 4. Sodium perchlorate. That is 8 is present but a per is added. So only 4 cases for the number of oxygen. Number of oxygen is 1, 2, 3, 4 with 2 other elements. For 1 it is hypo, then the halo name partially, then ite. For the second one, for 2 number of oxygen, it is only ite. For 3 number of oxygen, the suffix is 8. And for 4 number of oxygen, just now we saw per, halo name 8. So very simple. Hypohaloite, only halate, haloate, only haloite for 2, haloate, per haloate. So this is how it is done. Now moving forward to the next part is what is a chemical equation. Now the most important thing is what is the purpose of a chemical equation. The purpose of a chemical equation is that it depicts the number of reactants that have react to produce the final product. So that is how we indicate it with the help of a chemical equation. So that is the main purpose of a chemical equation, to show the reaction. Now, how do we write a chemical equation? Keeping few things in mind. We write the name of the reactants with a plus sign in between them. Then, these are the reactants on the LHS part. Put an arrow. Write the products formed, joining them with the plus sign. So, let's see an example of a chemical equation. For example, sodium and H2O. Okay, so I just balanced it so that the number of reactants and the number of products are equal. It depends on the question, but in general the question asks you to provide the balanced chemical equation only. So I am not moving to the balancing of the equations today. So this is how the chemical equation is written. Reactants with a plus sign, arrow, that this is how the reactants are moving towards the products with the arrow. So if I do not balance it, okay, without the balancing, it is termed as the skeletal equation. No balancing is done. But the moment I balance it, this is termed as the balanced chemical equation. Okay, so this is how we write a chemical equation. Very easy, plus sign, so that we can actually say that this reacts with this, reacts with this. So we are reacting it, we are summing them up, providing this product. So that is why we are using the arrow sign. Okay, so in general, even if nothing is said, always ensure that you balance the equation. I am not going towards the balancing part right now, but yes, I will be discussing that in very much details, so that it becomes very easy for all of you, with tips as well, tips for balancing as well. So moving forward to the next part. So now we understood that a chemical equation is written in this way. So chemical equation can have several variations. You can find it in your textbook as well, that chemical equation with two reactants should be minimum, or one reactant can be there if it is a decomposition reaction. That will go on later on. So one reactant, two product, two reactant, two product, and all these sort of cases are given. It may be asked in your question as well, that write a chemical equation that involves two reactants and two products. So these sort of examples are already given in your textbook. Just go through them. With the course of time, if you keep on practicing them thoroughly, you will have certain equations registered in your mind. For example, one reactant, three product. Okay, so if we see one reactant, calcium carbonate, heated. What does this imply? It has been heated. CaO plus CO2. Next case, two reactant, two product. It may be asked for you to show it. Two reactant, two product. Let's see. Fe plus CuSO4 forming FeSO4 plus Cu. It is a displacement equation, two reactant, two product. Then we have several other cases in this way. You can find these examples in your textbook, so you can just go through them. Make sure that you remember the important ones, as well as always ensure that you give them balance. That is easy balancing ones, which are not very tough, which does not take too much of time, that sort of. So with this, I end today's class. Next day we will be going for the balanced equation. How can you balance the equation with least time time, least effort, but in an efficient manner. That is something which we are going to see. I'll be sharing certain tips for balancing, ensuring that I cover balancing in details with many examples. So next day's class will be very important for all of you. So thank you everyone for watching. Stay tuned, and if you are still not subscribed my channel, subscribe it for your own benefit. So stay tuned, keep watching. I'll be coming with the next video very soon, sharing with you all the tips for going for efficient balancing of the equations. Till then, keep on learning. Thank you everyone.